Welcome to the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, where you get multifamily investing made real. Learn from top players in the real estate investment world as they share their secrets with you and discover proven strategies on apartment investing that actually work. To learn more about Wheelbarrow Profits, visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. Now to your hosts, Jake and Gino.
Hello everybody, this is Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barro. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, microphone working this week, bro?
I don't know. It's just going Apple, iPhone thing, and we'll see how it works. Still waiting on Amazon to deliver the other one. So we're trying to make it happen. We're doing our best, and sorry about last week to the listeners. So putting that out there. Anyways, today's guest is Jefferson Lilly. Jefferson is one of America's top mobile home park owners. His company owns 16 mobile home parks across the U.S. And before committing to real estate investing full-time, Jefferson held various sales roles in Silicon Valley. So without further ado, Jefferson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jake and Gino. It's great to be with you today. And thrilled to announce we're actually up to 19 mobile home parks. We've been busy for the last two months or so since we sent you that outdated number. So it's
fantastic.
Good to be growing.
Fantastic. So let's hear a little bit about your story. Sales leader in venture-backed startups to mobile home park maven. So why don't you tell us about the transition?
Yeah, so I spent almost a decade, basically my 30s, working for three different high-tech startups, had stock options, live out here in San Francisco, was working out in Silicon Valley, the whole thing. I never quite ever said, oh my gosh, mobile home parks are so awesome, I'm giving up my sexy stock options to go do that full-time. But what I did see was that startups aren't all Google. They don't all work out fantastically well. I wanted to diversify my investments away from anything tech related. And, I had gone through the dot-com boom and bust, came out a little luckier than smart, but it's always better to be lucky than smart. But basically just got really focused on Warren Buffett and value investing. And so did some more stock market investing for value stocks. And then just, again, thought, well, why don't I diversify and buy some value real estate? I thought initially, frankly, that I'd buy an apartment building. I figured I'd, fix up some kitchens, put on a new roof, whatever it would take, make it better for tenants, bump the rents, make it better for me. I don't mind going to work. But then just in looking like on LoopNet under multifamily, I'd see 99 apartment buildings at an 8 cap, and then I'd see one mobile home park listed at like 11 cap. And I thought, that's absurd. I'm not buying a friggin' trailer park. And I'd delete the search and do it again and again. And I probably took me 4, 5, 6 times getting hit over the head that mobile home parks seem to have such a higher cap rate. Anyway, so I started looking into it and then discovered some of the key things that make this really the most compelling niche in real estate. It's better than apartment buildings. It's better than self-storage. It's better than retail. It's better than farmland or forest land or any of the niches. So I was part looking for a real estate investment, but also partially just stumbled into it.
So when did you start actually the journey towards mobile home parks? What year?
Oh, yeah, so that was late 2005. I got turned on to it roughly about November of 05. And from that point, just started, buying every book that I could find, went to some courses, just started putting the word out to my own personal and professional network that I wanted to buy a mobile home park. And I got a lot of strange looks, but some people were helpful. Like one guy from my church just said, oh, my dad owned a mobile home park, and that was what sent our whole family on an awesome vacation to Europe every summer. Here's my dad's number. Talk to my dad. So I built up an unofficial advisory board of about 10 guys that all owned parks. And then it took more than a year. I just started running deals by them, and I wasn't looking for a deal full time. I did still have my day job at that last third tech startup. But I did buy my first park. It took about 17 months from when I first got turned on to the space But even then, again, I still had my day job for about a year. I overlapped. And I could see then after a year that last third startup wasn't doing real well. And I could see that my mobile home park was doing reasonably well, and I was putting no time or money into it. So then I started doing real estate full time. So that was how I transitioned into it, from sort of stumbling onto this wonderful little niche, but still kept my W-2 income from my job for about a year, and then decided to do it full time.
So Jefferson, what was your big why for real estate? Well, what really drove you to mobile home park specifically, or why?
Okay, so I figured real estate in general was going to be better priced than the stock market. So right there, any sort of real estate probably would do better than the stock market over the long run. Plus, of course, you can buy it with leverage. We usually usually borrow about 75% of our purchase price. But the things then that make mobile home parks particularly compelling basically are all the reasons that apartment buildings are compelling plus. So the same reasons are that if you buy right and you buy with leverage, you're going to do really well. You've got diversified tenant base. There seems to be always demand for affordable housing. So that is what we share with apartment investing. The things that make this better are several. So first, we don't own most of the mobile homes. The tenants own their mobile homes. That means two things. First, we don't maintain all the proverbial leaky toilets and leaky roofs. Those are on the tenants. And not surprisingly, when somebody owns something, they take better care of it. So it's reduced maintenance all the way around. Reduced maintenance costs for us as the landlord, and reduced maintenance costs for them because they're taking better care of it. Mm-hmm. So first, our maintenance costs are reduced. Secondly, it costs around, let's just say $5,000 to move a single wide mobile home. And most of your tenants also like their neighbors. So they don't have $5,000 to pick up and move. And again, they tend to like their neighbors in the park. So very few tenants move. So if you bump your rents from $300 to $315, $320, they aren't going to pick up and move their house for $5,000 just to try and save $15 or $20. So the tenants are much more stable. The tenant really is the mobile home. Even if a tenant leaves and takes a job in another city, they don't take their home with them. They leave that home in place. They'll sell it on Craigslist to someone else. So the tenant really is the home, and the homes last, let's just say, at least 50 years. So our tenant turnover is about 2% a year. Compare that with most traditional apartment building investing, where you guys would know better than me. I think the turnover is more like 50% a year, or a third of your tenants' turnover every year. So we've got 2% turnover cost. And then finally, unlike apartment building investing, where they're always building new apartments, in the mobile home park world, it's basically illegal to build mobile home parks anymore. Okay, pretty much every city and county, board of whatever they are, the elected officials, the town fathers, look down on mobile home parks. And
sounds like discrimination to me, man. We should start something here. You know what I mean? We're gonna get the pitchforks out.
Big time income. They're incomeophobes, I guess, or most of the people that run these cities and town councils. There actually finally has been a study that's come out, and I'm not going to be able to cite the academic that did it. I'm sorry, but there has been a study that's come out just about 2 years ago that proved that mobile home parks do not have a higher crime rating than the surrounding neighborhood. If you've got a generally rough neighborhood with rough apartments and rough houses, the mobile home park is likely to be as rough as the surrounding neighborhood. And if it's a beautiful park on the water in Florida, and the surrounding homes are $500,000, $1 million homes, and everything's safe, then similarly that mobile home park is going to be statistically as safe as its surroundings. But yes, the business does have a very negative perception which frankly is one of the reasons more people aren't buying this niche. And of course, when there's not a lot of money chasing something, you can imagine what happens to the purchase price. So
Jefferson, that's very ironic what you're saying, because we're at a point in this country where there's not enough affordable housing. So what does the government do? They come in and give you tax credits and make it an efficient system where you have to spend $100,000 a unit to create housing, where you have this niche where it doesn't really cost a third of that maybe to get that in place. So there's once again the government coming in, screwing things up, and not saying let the market take care of it. That infuriates me.
When government wants to help the people, it wants to build more Section 8 housing that it owns, and then government becomes even bigger. Whereas the right answer is just hands off and allow more. This would be a significant part. I'm not saying it's going to completely solve America's affordable housing crisis, but it would do loads to improve the situation if government would just allow more mobile home parks to be built and not add other requirements like, well, if you're going to build a
You're not pretty though, Jefferson. You're not pretty. Mobile home parks aren't pretty. They want something pretty going in there. You're hurting home values.
Or at least something big that they own, like a Section 8 apartment building.
Yeah.
They don't want to just
I'm
let
telling
the
you,
free
it's
market
discrimination,
take
man.
care.
This is discrimination here on the part of these towns. So
But Jefferson, you answered my question, I guess, about the logical perspective. But what was your emotional, point of getting into real estate? Were you fed up with your job? Because people always like to hear the motivational aspect of it. And the reason why, I always feel that reason why is the most important question we can ask. Because a lot of people are really smarter than the three of us put together on the show. They don't know where to start, and they don't know why. So what was your real reason why to get out of corporate, or what was it?
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled, at least with that last tech startup, but I wasn't, I wasn't suicidal and frustrated and whatever. So I wasn't so much running from something. And of course, when you run from something, any direction will get you there. But, I've always been very entrepreneurial. I mean, I've obviously, again, I spent a decade, most of my 30s, working at different startups. The first startup was three of us in our respective different bedrooms. We didn't even have office space for about the first 6 months. And I started. Yeah, there you go. So I've always been entrepreneurial. I started, mowing the lawns in Denver in my neighborhood where I grew up when I was like age 11 and shoveling the winter snow. And I just always, have been more entrepreneurial. And frankly, I ended up, those first couple of startups got bought by large publicly traded companies. So I kept getting gobbled up into large public companies, not by choice. But, I just discovered, again, from doing this side by side with my day job, I discovered this was a very good business. And it still feels very entrepreneurial. Well, it is. Indeed, not all the folks that I work with are quite the same caliber as from, the folks that I worked with in Silicon Valley. But, there's something to be said also for working in a business where you're not competing with, other really bright men and women coming out of Stanford and Berkeley and whatnot, and you can just kind of have it all to yourself, so to speak. So, so I could just see that this was going to be a good business. And it did kind of take on a life of its own. To be candid, I thought initially I'd just go into it for about a year. I figured I could, with a year's worth of work and some additional capital, I could double the income of that property. And I did that. But that then led to consulting to some high net worth families here in California that have interests in mobile home parks. I then bought my second park, and then now almost 4 years ago formed the Park Street Partners partnership, and we've started raising money from high net worth individuals to scale up. Again, we're now at 19 parks. That's way more than I could have bought on my own. We've got about 1,500 pads now under management. So I was just very attracted to truly working for myself and seeing a decent income come from it. And then I also just like the idea that I'll be able to pass these down to my kids. They may still be mobile home parks. Maybe they get redeveloped into something else, some higher and better use. Who knows? But owning real estate seems much more, nothing's forever, but still it seems much more permanent than owning high-tech
Well, the
stuff.
land's going to be there for a while, right?
Huh?
The land will be there. We know that much.
Well, as they say, buy land. They aren't making it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if you buy mobile home parks, not only are they not making it anymore, but about 1% get plowed under every year and become some higher and better use. So they're making less of it every year. What other real estate actually shrinks in supply every year? Nothing other than mobile home parks has a shrinking supply curve.
So you're syndicating mobile home park deals, basically.
That's what we do now. Yeah, my partner Brad and I do that. Yeah, so we've bought. I've still got when I say 19, that's my 2. Plus, we bought 17 in the partnership. We've already got another one under contract, and just submitted an offer on about a 500 pad beauty this morning. Who knows if that'll go through? But you don't submit offers, you don't get. So you gotta
target this guy over here. Your high net worth individuals, the guy sitting with the blue walls behind him. See if you can get some money out of him.
I don't know about that.
Upside down. Fall out of his pocket.
I'm telling you, he's selling some property this month. I'm just saying, you might get a little piece.
Well, let me ask you a question. Before we talk about that first deal, what have you seen the transition? You started back in 2005 before the crash. You go through the crash. I bet you 11 cap goes to 7 cap, goes back to a 13 cap. Now it's back down to a 7 cap. What have you seen in that last 10 or 12 years that really opened your eyes and said, wow?
The cap rates have remained relatively constant. This is such an underfollowed niche. They never compressed down to 7. There might have been some slight change, but you can really compensate for whatever slight changes in the cap rates just by working a little harder, outreach to brokers, outreach to park owners, and just try and source a deal yourself that's not being widely shopped. Mm-hmm. So this business didn't work like apartment buildings. The cap rates have not swung that much. And probably, again, this is not only is the niche smaller, I guesstimate about $1 billion worth of mobile home parks trade hands every year. It's probably 100 billion or more of apartment buildings that trade hands. So this is a very small, underfollowed niche, and to be candid, the average deal size is quite small, probably under $1 million. Now, what we buy on average is more like 2 million, maybe 3. But just because the average deal is so small, it's hard for the big Wall Street funds to deploy $100 million a year.
It's just not there.
Yeah, the scale isn't there. This is a perfect business for the classic high net worth individual or somebody who's, 50 years old and has 50,000 in savings and doesn't quite know how they're going to retire in 10 years. This is an answer to that. If you play your cards right, you could have 50,000 in recurring income in 10 years and be perfectly set for retirement if you're the classic small investor. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but this business just doesn't scale. The cap rates didn't really collapse. And then my own experience, I again got interested in the space in late 2005. It took me until March of 2007, about 17 months, to close my first deal. That was the zenith, or the end of the zenith of housing and easy financing. And beginning that summer and all through 2008 and 2009, obviously, was the housing crisis. And I kept expecting my manager to call and say, hey, like a third of the people didn't pay rent this month. Do you really want me to evict for non-payment? Because we do enforce no pay, no stay. But that never happened. I bought my first park on the south side of Oklahoma City, which is just classic middle America. It wasn't Las Vegas, Miami, Phoenix. It wasn't where the housing bubble really occurred. I think something like 80% of all the housing defaults occurred in about 25 zip codes or something. It was fairly concentrated. It got a great amount of press, but the problems were relatively geographically specific. So long story short, I took our lot rents from 110, which is very low, to about 155 from 2007 to 2009. So that's about a 50% increase in
huge
lot rents.
I mean, you talk $50, but still it's a big percentage increase.
Percentage increase, yeah. So did wonders for the cash flow, and we remained 95 to 100% full every month right through the crash. 07, 08, 09. Lot rents went up 50%. and we stayed full.
That's a cell phone bill right there, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay. Yeah.
So that was my experience going through the crash, and I've gone through actually and looked at some of there are 3 large publicly traded REITs that own mobile home parks, and I've looked at their numbers, and they're multi-billions in value, but they had basically the same experience. They just kept cash flowing, they bumped rents. So it's interesting to see that whether you were a small guy like Jefferson with my first park for less than $500,000 on the south side of Oklahoma City, or whether you were a large publicly traded REIT that owns stuff across America, basically this whole niche just sailed right through the housing crisis quite well.
What would you tell an investor listening to the podcast, the action steps or the next step to get into mobile home park? What should they start out with?
Yeah, so you can go to like Amazon and find some books to read. We do our own podcast called Mobile Home Park Investors. Website is simply mobilehomeparkinvestors.net. But we go through all the specifics, from episode 1 right through. We're now up to episode 55 or so. We go through why you want to buy this business, how to do on-site diligence, how to do off-site diligence, how to pick a manager, how to find a mobile home to buy and move into your park to fix a vacancy, how to get financing. I think we've done a pretty good job with our podcast of covering all the key aspects of how to go about finding, managing, and cash flowing out of a mobile home park. And then I'd certainly, again, encourage other folks just to build up their own unofficial advisory board. If you ask around, you will find people that own mobile home parks, or go to your local RIA meeting and meet other real estate investors. If you start seeking, you will find.
That's right.
So folks just need to kind of then, again, build up, I'd say, an advisory board and just start bouncing deals off other investors. And ultimately, you got to just jump in. You won't know everything, but you will have learned as much as possible, for not yet being in the business, and then get in with something and work it. And hopefully you buy a park that, has some infill opportunity, and you can really, again, do quite well. Basically, I've said if you're not making 20% cash on cash, you're doing something wrong in this business. And again, if you buy something that's got upside in rents and maybe has some junk in it that needs to be removed, some potholes to be fixed, you make this better for tenants. You'll make it better for yourself. You can do well for your tenants and do well for yourself.
Mm-hmm. How do you find management companies for mobile home parks? Because I'd have to imagine there's fewer management companies that do this specific niche.
Yes, and this is a niche that really does not lend itself to management companies. So all but one of our properties are managed by somebody that lives in the park. So what we look for when we go into a park and we need to hire a manager, we look for the nicest house or the nicest 5 houses. Somebody that it doesn't have to be a new house, but somebody that's, kept it painted, somebody that's mowing their lawn, somebody that doesn't have junk in the lawn, somebody that shows pride of ownership is going to be a great candidate to be your manager. And again, if they own their own home, they're really vested to make sure that the community goes right, especially if they've got their own kids. They're not going to want to let just anybody with a criminal background come into the park. So we hire somebody from the park, obviously lives in the park and owns their own home, which also indicates they're more financially stable than the average apartment renter, say. They may not live in a house as nice as you and I do, but at least they've risen up out of the ranks of being an apartment renter to own their own 4 walls. So you find somebody, again, who's accomplished that in their life. Honestly, many of our managers would almost do the job for free. They just want to keep the community nice. They want to make sure that the guy across the street also has to mow his lawn. They don't want any unsavory activity in the park. So we of course do pay our managers, but
man, I was like, no employee costs, no expense costs, man. You're selling me right now. I'm thinking about it.
We do pay our taxes. There.
What else do you look for in a deal, Jefferson? I mean, I see the writing on the wall. I see your expenses are probably 30% of income. What else pops out at you? Low rents, utilities. Just go through the gamut of what you're really looking for in a deal.
Yeah. So, we have to triage deals, if you will. We get a lot of deal flow from brokers. We get some deal flow off our podcast. There are only so many hours in the day. So what we'll do when I get a deal across my desk, the first thing I'll do is look through it. This is, say, something that might come from a broker that's sort of a proper offering memorandum. I want to see if the park is on city water and city sewer, okay? Those are the best parks to buy. I do own a couple of parks that have private utilities. It's been a bit of a headache, but fortunately the upside in rents, more than compensated for that. But I think certainly for a first-time investor, you want to have a park that's city water, city sewer. That way you've got no risk of a well running dry or your sewage lagoon or septic field or packaging plant failing, because that could easily be a six-figure expense. The back end, the sewer side, is going to be much more expensive than drilling a new well, but you don't want problems with any of that. So we look quickly to see if it's all city utilities. We then, secondly, just pull it up like on Google Maps, and we're looking to see if it's within 5 miles of a super Walmart. If it is, that probably indicates that it's a good deal. Super Walmarts go in where the economy is at least stable, and obviously that's a significant investment for Walmart to build such a thing and buy the land. So we're looking to be within 5 miles of a super Walmart. And then a third thing then is we will go, actually while we're on Google Maps, we'll just type in like mobile home park, or even that park specifically, its name. And we just want to see if it comes up in Google Maps. And I'll go over to yp.com, which is yellowpages.com, and I'll type in the park name, or again, just put in mobile home parks for that town and see if it comes up in the search result. If it doesn't, that's a good thing. That indicates that the current owner isn't really marketing. Probably half of our properties literally haven't been listed in the Yellow Pages. Fewer of them have been listed on Google Earth. So again, what that means, if it's not listed, if it's an invisible park, that just means you've got a great upside from listing it in Yellow Pages, in Google Maps. And you can bet that the owner is not putting ads up on Craigslist for houses for rent, or just to move in a house into a vacant pad. So again, we look for good bones, as it were, the all city utilities, good economy to be within 5 miles of a super Walmart, and good upside, which means the park has not been well marketed.
Do you have any specific cities or markets you're targeting right now?
No. Most of what we end up buying would be towns of probably 50,000 and larger, and probably 200,000 to 300,000 has been our average. No, if we've got, again, good bones, if we've got a good economy, and if we've got good upside, then we'd be almost as happy to buy in a 50,000 person town as a 5 million town.
So what are your buying parameters right now? You talk 20% cash on cash. What is your cap rate and I guess debt coverage ratio? What are you looking for in that when you're buying?
Yeah, we buy on average probably around a 9 cap. We're borrowing typically around 75% loan to value. That's typically, let's say on average, on a 25-year amortization schedule. And the interest rates for us now are probably pricing about 5.2. And if we're borrowing from a bank, it'll be fixed at that rate for 5 years. If we're borrowing from the CMBS market, the conduit market, it'll be about 5.2% fixed for 10 years. But that's about what our money costs. And so you just do the math. If you buy at a 9 cap, 75% leverage, you're going to start at about 15% cash on cash. That's what you get if you cannot make any improvements. Again, we'll go ahead and try and cut some costs. We'll probably bump rents 10%, maybe 20%. And then we'll start bringing in mobile homes onto any vacant pads. Anyway, so it's not that hard to starting at 15% cash on cash. It's not that hard to get to 20% cash on cash.
So you're buying new mobile homes then and putting them on the pads, or you're letting people bring their own in?
We'd prefer the latter, but it's very rare that anybody is both credit worthy enough to buy a mobile home, but somehow not interested or not credit worthy enough to put it on their own land. So most folks that are buying a new house, which would be a $40,000 to $60,000 expense for the home, most people who can take down that big of a nut have got the financial wherewithal to go buy a quarter or a half acre of land, maybe for $20,000, improve it with a driveway, a well, septic, and put the house there. So it's rare that people move homes into mobile home parks. We do advertise, and it has happened. So that's basically the free money, if you will, when someone moves in a house. We'll still often pay for the move, a couple thousand out of our pocket. But you then are collecting the lot rent. And again, the proverbial leaky toilets and leaky roof maintenance is on the tenant. But we do have, there are a couple companies that will finance mobile homes, and then they'll bring them into our parks. They'll collect the house payment. We collect the lot rent payment.
That seems like the sweet spot to me.
That's more frequently what we do. And then we can afford to get somebody into a brand new, like almost 1,300 square foot house, like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single wide mobile home, 16 by 80. That's 1,280 square feet. They can get into that for about $45,000, and it'll be probably $3,000 down, maybe $4,000. So somewhere around 10% down, maybe a little less. And between our finance company and us, we're taking a risk on folks. First off, there generally aren't any homes available for 40-something thousand in the market. And again, if there were, folks would have to come up with more like 20% down, and banks typically don't lend to folks that may have a 500 some odd credit score. But we'll take a chance. We'll give those kind of folks a shot at home ownership. No bank will ever lend to these people. We're really their only path to home ownership. And then their all-in payment is probably $700, maybe $800 at the most. And again, a typical 3-bedroom apartment in most of our markets would be around $1,000. So these folks are paying less, and they're on a path to home ownership. So it's a win-win for them and for us.
What happens if they finance it, bring it into your park, and then they crap out? Does the finance company come in and haul it away?
Good question. That's the way the business used to work, but it generally doesn't work that way now. We don't deal with companies that would do that. So we've got a relationship with a company that's actually a division of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company.
It's got to be Clayton. Yeah, okay.
And 21st Mortgage Finance Company. So what happens if somebody fails to make a payment and they get evicted is that we have to make up their mortgage payment. We don't have to pay off the mortgage. We just have to fill the missing, holes in the cash flow.
So you're essentially a guarantor.
We're effectively, yes. And then we're on the same side of the table with the finance company. And so we're motivated to get a new tenant in there to try and buy the house. So we make a couple months payment. Hopefully not more than that. We get somebody new in the house, and then we go back to just collecting the lot rent. But the house doesn't leave. So that's the key thing that Buffett and his team at Berkshire Hathaway have seen, is they've structured this so we all work together, the house finance company and the landlord, to keep tenants in their home, keep the cash flowing over to Berkshire Hathaway. But again, as long as there's a tenant in there, we collect the lot rent. So we've been doing that now 2.5 years, the longest with our Kansas City area park. So far, we've had not a single default. I'm sure it will happen, but so far it's been working well for tenants. They obviously like their homes. They're making the payments. We're collecting the lot rents. These folks are on track to become homeowners, and some as little now as just another 5 years. They'll own those homes outright. So again, it's done right. It's a good win-win for the finance company, for the landlord, and for deserving families that otherwise just wouldn't have a path to home ownership.
Do you guys get a lot of owner financing deals in this niche?
We've had a couple out of the 19. We find most sellers don't understand seller financing, and they think you're trying to take advantage of them by somehow not fully paying for the mobile home park. And we try and make it clear that, well, if we do pay fully, you have to pay fully on your taxes, and then you're just going to put your money in the bank and earn 1% on it? Like, why not let me pay you 25% and you keep 75% in the deal, and I might pay you 4, 5, 6% interest on it. But most sellers, to be candid, are not sophisticated enough to understand the benefits of seller carry. They just think somehow you're trying to screw them out of the deal by not giving them a big pile of cash that, of course, they then have to pay taxes on. So it's only been about 2 out of those 19. We're typically dealing with local banks, and then we have had, I think, 2 or 3 CMBS transactions, which is where our mortgage, there's no bank, it gets pooled up with other mortgages and sold off on Wall Street. So for some of our bigger deals that are upwards of $4 million, we've tapped into the fancy Wall Street money and gotten CMBS, but most of it has been bank financing.
How large are your deals? What's the size? Smallest to largest?
Our smallest deal was, I believe, $435,000, and our biggest was $4.2 million.
How many units? How many pads?
That small deal was 25 pads, plus it came with a very nice site-built house, a nice little 3-bedroom, 2-bath starter house. So really 26 units.
Is that where the
total.
manager lives?
No. That one is one of the ones where the manager lives. That's one of our Tulsa properties, and our manager actually lives in another Tulsa park where he does own his own house. It's our park, but he co-manages that one. So that's sort of an exception to the rule that one park doesn't have a manager living in it. But again, it's a guy from another park who can drive over and care for it. That's the park that we were able, you asked about people moving in homes. That's a park that's very near, I think it's like Oklahoma's number 2 or number 3 best high school. We're a half mile away from it, and we're one of 2 mobile home parks in that school district, and we were the only mobile home park with vacancy. So we ran ads on Craigslist, and we had 4 people move in mobile homes in 6 months and fill up the last 4 remaining vacancies. So again, we don't own those houses. We paid for the moves. We would have had it done in 4 months, but one of those mobile homes split in 2 on the highway. Oh, it was bad.
Man, part of the business, right?
The tenant, I think, had insurance on that. They bought another home, and 2 months later, that last pad filled. So you can infill parks if you've got a great economy, like Tulsa.
I hope no one was hurt.
Broken Arrow area, and if you've got a great school district. But anyway, So and then the largest one at $4.2 million that's our Superior, Wisconsin park, Homecroft, and it is 177 pads. I'm sorry, I take that back. That one's 155, of which about 145 were full. So we're in the process of infilling those last 10 pads with new homes.
So this is a mom and pop, Jake. This is the mom and pop of multifamily mobile home park. They come in any size. They come in every flavor. They're distressed.
Sure.
This is just
pick up a couple houses here or there. I hope you liquidated that 3-family. No.
Oh, that's a great question. So that's exactly what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
But the town of Broken Arrow had grown around and annexed this property. So it was grandfathered in as is, but it is almost illegal. It's very, very difficult to build any new mobile home parks in that town. And their zoning had changed such that any home lot has to have something like 100 feet of road frontage. And the way this park got started, talk about mom and pop, back in, I think, the 1960s, Pop built this very nice brick house in the middle of this 10-acre lot for his wife and his then 3 little kids.
The plantation.
And at some point in the 1970s, he started putting mobile homes on his front yard, not in back. He put them in the front.
Man, you want to keep an eye on them. I get it.
So now the house is in the back, and because the trailers are in front, there's no way to carve out land to get 100 feet of street frontage just dedicated to the house. Mm-hmm. So the house is now landlocked at the back of the park. It's not legal to break it off into its own parcel.
Talk about being a landlord, man, just sitting there watching over all your residents, right?
That's what that guy was doing.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. Wow.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that was a classic park. I don't think that one was either in the Yellow Pages or on Google Maps. And basically those 3 kids from the 60s had now obviously grown up. Mom and dad had died. They had inherited it, and they were squabbling and had differences in how they would manage the park. So it was kind of a motivated sale. They weren't advertising it. They obviously had vacant pads, and they were doing nothing even to advertise on Craigslist to have people bring in houses for free. They were just not managing it as well as we do. We're not perfect, but obviously there was upside there, and we manage it better, and we make a bit more money on it now. We probably doubled the value of that one in a little less than 3 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
My last question, I guess, before Jake takes over the short answer section is, what's your best real estate investing tip for the listeners?
I think generally it's just to get into the business. The mistake I made was I waited until I was about age 39 to buy my first property. And looking back at my career and my finances, I probably could have bought my first property 10 years sooner, certainly 5 years sooner. So find a niche. I'm obviously a huge fan of mobile home parks, but whatever your niche is, if it's going to be fix and flip or self-storage or apartments, pursue it with a passion. Build up your advisory board of other folks already in the business. Learn as much as you can. I might even advise partnering right off the bat with someone. That's not what I did. I just bought my own park entirely myself. But I would advise, if you can find a more experienced investor, that you go in with that person. Maybe you do the work. Maybe they put up more of the capital. You'll figure out whatever is the right partnership. But, get some real expertise to help you one way or the other. But get into the business. Real estate generally is a very good business if you go in, with eyes wide open and you've done your homework. And again, we think it's a much better path to retirement than investing in the stock market or most anything else out there. So get educated and get in. That's my advice.
I think that's pretty good. What about a daily habit? Is there, as a full-time investor, is there something that you do on a daily basis that makes you successful?
Whether it's daily or at least weekly, I'm constantly learning. I'm in a mastermind group of other investors, and that's a weekly call. And I am talking still with other investors on an ad hoc basis, probably another time or two a week. So I find I can always learn something. I always love hearing other investors' war stories, for better, for worse. So I think it's just that I'm kind of constantly talking to other investors, constantly learning, still reading books, going to trade shows, and just, again, try and continually educate myself.
Okay, so to piggyback off of that then, what is the best book that you could recommend to the listeners? And it doesn't have to be specific to mobile homes. It could be a business book that really made an impact on you.
I'm a really big fan of Snowball, which is the one of the most recent biographies on Warren Buffett. So really gets into not only how he analyzes an investment, which is still very applicable to real estate, but also covers...
Talk about it a little bit. What were the takeaways? Because I think that'd be really helpful to the listeners.
His advice... well, it's interesting watching how he progressed. So he started buying what he now calls cigarette butt companies. Mm-hmm. So basically they were buying...
Couple puffs left.
Yeah, fair businesses, but at a good price. And frankly, there's some parallels there with my first mobile home park. And what he does now is to buy good businesses at a fair price. So he's looking more long-term. He's willing to pay more for a business that has more than a couple puffs left. So he's evolved and has paid up for quality. And I think we see that, the wisdom of that in our business. The cigarette puff, the fair business, but at a good price type mobile home parks often have hidden costs of a lot of management
CapEx,
involvement.
Yeah. Sound familiar, Gino?
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas when we've paid up for better quality parks, the money just seems to come in and we rarely have headaches. So anyway, so I think that's probably the key takeaway from that. There's also some interesting insight into his personal life. I would say he's been less successful with his personal life than in his business life. So, and I'm no paragon of having had a perfect personal life. I don't mean to sound critical of the man, but it's just a fairly extensive biography. And so you'll get to see the trade-offs that he made to make his career go and what the impact was on his family. So I think it's a fairly sort of holistic, fairly complete portrayal of the world's greatest investor.
Cool. Yeah, I read that one. I thought it was pretty good. What's the biggest mistake that you've made in the mobile home park business that you could, put out there to, help the listeners prevent from making the same mistake?
Yeah, I'd say I'm gonna come up with two mistakes.
Sure.
I'm gonna exceed plan.
It's great. So, bring it on.
You've only got two? That's great. I've got like 30 I could share. I could have a whole 2 shows on that.
And I think I came up with 12, and I could go back and probably do another 12 now. But I think the mistakes, I'll highlight two. So first, my first park, based on what I know now, was a mistake. Not because I've lost money on it, but because it was a fair business at a good price, but it required a lot of my time. So a lot of opportunity costs. So what that park cost me was, some other park that I otherwise could have bought. I would have had the time and the money to go and buy something else. So instead, again, what I bought was a fair park at a good price, and I put a lot of time and effort into it, and it cash flows nicely. But I don't think I'd do that again. I'd rather go out and pay more for a better quality park, and then have the time and resources to buy some other better quality park. Mm-hmm. So that's the first mistake. And the second is that I entered this business really thinking that with the mindset that I was a value investor rather than a money manager or rather than a value money manager. Again, I've now been able to scale well beyond my own personal resources because I now view myself as a money manager, and we've raised money from about 70 individuals. We've raised about $18 million over the last 3 years. So I would have not bought my first park, and I would have gotten to raising money from other investors to grow more quickly. I would have done all that sooner rather than waiting. It took me about 6 years after I got into the business before I started raising outside capital. So I would have done that. Still probably would have done maybe the first deal on my own, but maybe by year 2 or 3 would have been raising outside capital. So there are a couple of mistakes.
Why specifically is that a mistake, and why would you have started raising money sooner?
I view this very much as a win-win, right? So yes, I make money. That's a good thing from my perspective, but we're also expanding the supply of affordable housing. That's very much in need, and that's a win for our tenants. When we go in some of our parks, we've literally hauled out several tons of junk in like 24-yard cubic dumpsters, and we've had to boot out some folks that have been dealing drugs or engaging in other unsavory behavior. So we're proud now that many of our parks have families referring family members to come move in. now that we've cleaned up the bad elements, be it literal trash and tires and old couches and refrigerators lying around, or be it some criminal elements. So it's a win for the tenants. It's a win for us. And I wish I had scaled up sooner to make more money for myself and to make more of a difference in these people's lives.
Okay. What, and just a couple more here, the best deal and why?
The best deal that we've done?
Yeah.
Oh, we really like our Wyoming deal. It is a park where 100% of the tenants own their own homes, so it is a proverbial parking lot. This is in the Green River, Wyoming area. Most of Wyoming, about 60%, is owned by the federal government, the Bureau of Land Management. The implication there is that this metro area, while it's surrounded by a lot of vacant land, it's not legal to build on that land. So this town has an artificial constraint for new construction. The average house price is about $250,000. That's crazy high. So there's very strong demand for affordable housing. So that park was actually full when we bought it. Unfortunately, it's not legal to expand it. But we've been able to bump rents there. Actually, we'll probably have a couple of houses to rehab. But basically that park, by virtue of being full with tenant-owned homes, has cash flowed quite nicely. I think we're doing around 35% cash on cash there.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
What's the best way for listeners to get a hold of you? And what was that podcast that you're mentioning?
Yeah, sure. So our podcast, we started the industry's first. It's simply called Mobile Home Park Investors. So you can go to iTunes or to Stitcher or wherever you download your podcasts and just put in Mobile Home Park Investors. Then the website is mobilehomeparkinvestors.net. And if you go to that website, it'll, again, not only link you to the podcast, it'll also link you to our LinkedIn group. We run the largest group on LinkedIn, about 3,500 members, specifically for folks interested in mobile home parks. And that group is also called Mobile Home Park Investors. And then our partnership, Park Street Partners, we are always looking for other folks to co-own parks with us if you want to invest with us. We're going to be opening our third fund, I think, here in another 2 or 3 months. Our website is parkstreetpartners.com. We're also at .net, but we're migrating to .com. And we're also open to folks that may know of a park for sale. We'll pay a referral fee if you want to flip it to us. Or if you want to invest in the deal with us, we can partner. I think we've done that about 3 times where folks have brought us a mobile home park. That it's usually off market. We tend to know about all the stuff brokers are shopping. But if somebody knows of a park for sale, coming up for sale, that's maybe not widely marketed, again, we'd happily pay a referral fee to somebody on that or partner with them. So again, parkstreetpartners.com.
Get that deal flow going for Jefferson here. We got to get some transactions going this year, right? Let's get buying.
I've got $5 million in the bank right now. I need to.
You got to deploy it. I know, man. Hey Jefferson, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, Jake and Gino, thank you both. Best of luck.
Jefferson, thank you.
We trust that you enjoy the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast. Visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. See you next time when Jake and Gino share more of their investing secrets with you.